Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
I'm Mark Golub, and there are a handful of organizations in the Jewish world whose names are iconic. They're known by everyone. And they evoke in Jews feelings of respect and appreciation and pride. And none more so than Hadassah. Hadassah is the world's preeminent women's Zionist organization and has been so for more than a century. Its founder is an iconic Jewish personality, Henrietta Szold, a courageous, brilliant woman, a pioneering feminist before the feminist movement was born, a profoundly committed Jew who studied at the Jewish Theological Seminary of America before women had any role at JTS, and a passionate Zionist who, before Theodor Herzl published his pamphlet, The Jewish State, in 1896, Henrietta Szold was speaking publicly about her vision of a Jewish homeland in Palestine. Henrietta Szold created Hadassah in 1912 as an American Jewish women's volunteer organization. And at one time, it seemed that every Jewish woman in America, every Jewish woman's mother and grandmother was an active member of Hadassah. And in the United States today, Hadassah has over 330,000 members. And of course, Hadassah is associated with two major thrusts, major goals. One is health, the health of all Israelis, men and women, through one of the bedrock foundation institutions of Israeli history and Israeli life, Hadassah Hospital, which brought medical care to pre-state Palestine shortly after World War I. The Hadassah Medical Center was established in 1934 with two hospital facilities in Jerusalem, one in Ein Kerem, and of course the renowned medical center on Mount Scopus, which had a dramatic role in Israel's War of Independence of 1948, including the infamous massacre of a medical convoy on its way up to Hadassah Hospital, in which Arabs murdered 78 Jewish doctors, nurses, faculty members, students, patients, and one British soldier. Today, the Hadassah Medical Center also operates schools of medicine, dentistry, nursing, pharmacology as part of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and is dedicated to providing medical care without regard for race, religion, or ethnicity, Jew or Arab alike. And the second of the organization's goals is that of women's issues, women's health, and the empowerment of women in the State of Israel and throughout Jewish society. And Hadassah is about to convene its second annual Women's Health Empowerment Conference in Washington, D.C., May 15th to 17th, to address the ways in which women's health issues are not being given the same attention and priority as are men's. And on May 16th, policymakers and legislators and some of the most creative minds in the medical world will be meeting to discuss ways of enhancing women's health, from prevention and diagnosis to treatment and cure. And on this edition of L'Chaim, I have the wonderful pleasure of being joined by the national president of Hadassah, Ellen Hershkin, who is part of 4 generations of family members of Hadassah, and who's worked for more than 40 years in various leadership positions in Hadassah before becoming its national president in 2016. By the way, Ellen Hershkin has been an amazingly tireless force for good in the Jewish community in myriad of ways. Ellen is currently on the board of directors of the Jewish National Fund and on the board of governors of the Jewish Agency. She's been on the board of trustees of the American Jewish Congress and is a founding executive board member of the Friends of Israel Sports Center for the Disabled. The list of Ellen's contributions to Jewish life go on and on and on. It is so wonderful to have you at this table joining me on L'chaim. Thank you, Ellen, for making this trip and sitting with me.
Thank you for asking me. It's a pleasure.
I read about all you've done. Oh, my goodness. And I said to her, who are you? And how did you become you? Where were you born?
I was born in Brooklyn Jewish Hospital. Isn't that a good place to be born?
It's wonderful. And who were your parents?
My parents were Miriam Goldberg and Frank Goldberg, married in 1946, and I was lucky to have them as long as I did. I can say that we were raised in a traditionally Jewish home, not necessarily observant ritually, but certainly a traditional home. And my father is probably the strongest influence on why I do what I do.
Tell me how.
We often talk about the survivors and the victims of the Holocaust. But the unit in which my father fought in World War II was a liberating unit. They liberated Mauthausen.
Oh, wow.
And it had a profound impact on my father's life. And from the time I was old enough to understand, my father explained, I was raised in a conservative Jewish home. And my father...
In Brooklyn?
I was born in Brooklyn, then I lived in Stuyvesant Town in Manhattan for a very short period, and then we moved to East Meadow.
Okay.
So I was really raised in East Meadow from the time I was 6.
Okay.
However, for as long as I can remember, my father always taught me that he would hope I would follow in conservative Judaism, but that was my choice. And I am an American, and America allows me the opportunities, but never to forget, first and foremost, that I am part of the Jewish people. And when it's my turn, I need to take the responsibility, and that's been a guiding influence on my life forever.
Wow. By the way, if I had known you when you were in your 20s, were you already somehow committed to Jewish life?
I was committed to Jewish life from the minute I was born. And you may not see outward signs of it, but there is one thing that I wear every day of my life, and that is my father's bar mitzvah ring. And it's something that he gave me when I was very young, and I thought it was the ugliest thing I had ever seen. It was discolored and cracked, and the stone was missing, and he told me that someday it would be beautiful, and I never really understood how right he was until after he passed away.
That's a lovely, lovely story.
And true.
Yeah. You say from the first day of your life, you were in some way a committed Jew.
Yes.
And this comes from your father. But wait, your mother too?
My mother too. My mother is a product of yeshiva. My mother went to Jewish day school. My mother's first language, although she was American born, was Yiddish. I was brought up in a home where Judaism was very important.
And Jewish identity was
Jewish
important.
identity was critically important.
Yes.
And Zionism was important.
By the way, that's interesting because there are homes in our era where there was a strong sense of Jewish identity, but not necessarily a Zionist home. Where did the Zionism come from, and how did your mother and father feel about Israel? They married in 48.
46.
46. Okay, so they married just before the State of Israel is created. And it seems, however, to have been important to them.
For sure. They're both my grandparents. 3 out of 4 of my grandparents were born either in White Russia or Poland, or depending upon where the boundary of the country was at any given time. So that was something that was very important to me. I remember as a child, as a very young child, sitting on my grandfather's lap during the Seder. I always heard about Israel in my home. And my parents supported Israel in any way they could, whether it was through specific charities or whether it was through Jewish education opportunities. And like many of my generation, My parents stressed the fact that the one thing that cannot be taken away from you is your education. And so they always supported Jewish education. I was the oddity. I was bat mitzvah at 13 when most of my friends did
Really?
not go to Hebrew school.
That's right.
So it sort of started when I was very young.
You were in a conservative synagogue.
Yes,
Who was your rabbi? Do you remember?
of course I do. Rabbi Noble, Israel Noble at the East Meadow Jewish Center.
Okay. And were other girls of your age having a bat mitzvah ceremony?
Not many.
No.
Not many, but it was important to my parents. Even though bat mitzvah wasn't something that my parents grew up with, it became important in suburban Long Island to make sure that I not only had the education at home, but the more formal education, even though it was a 3-day-a-week Hebrew school, not a Jewish day school.
You know, Ellen, you already said you were lucky. You were very lucky.
Yeah.
To have the parents you had. Yeah. When's the first time you go to Israel?
Oh, that's first time I went to Israel was in 1978 for the first National Hadassah Convention
Really?
in Israel, yes. And it was because I was enabled by my parents who attended a banquet the year before where I was honored as a Woman of the Year from my Hadassah chapter. And at the end of the conference banquet, our then president, Rose Novick of blessed memory, said, next year in Jerusalem. And by the way, it will be next year in Jerusalem because it was the first convention. After standing in line and getting my flower and whatever, I came back to my seat, and I was sitting between my husband and my mother turned to me and said, and you will be there. And I couldn't believe. I mean, I knew I'd get to Israel someday, but when I was old, like I am now. But in 1978, it was a dream come true. So I turned to my husband and said, if I'm going, you're going, because I don't want to come home and say, you should have seen. I want it to be an us.
What is your husband's name?
My husband's name is Joel.
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 Okay. And did Joel share, when you got married, the same Jewish perspective?
His parents did.
But he did not.
No.
Being
Not
married to
necessarily.
you, has he gone on a journey with you?
Absolutely, 100%. I'm proud of it, and so is he.
And you're a mother and a grandmother.
I am.
But we have how many children, how many grandchildren?
I have 2 children. I have a daughter and a son.
Lovely.
I have 2 children-in-law.
Yes.
I have 3 grandchildren, 2 girls and a boy. Amanda is 14, Jake is 11. They're brother and sister. They live here in Livingston, New Jersey. And their first cousin, my daughter's daughter, Emily, lives in Pacific Palisades, California.
Lovely. Are any of them involved in Jewish and Israel things?
Yes. I'm very proud to tell you.
You should
Do I
be
look
very-
like I'm beaming?
And you should be. There's a reason.
My daughter, Lisa, is an active Hadassah member in Southern California, and she is on the national board of the Friends of the Israel Sports Center for the Disabled.
Wonderful.
My kids grew up in a house where these things were just commonplace.
So in some way, what your parents gave to you, you gave to your children.
I hope so.
Why Hadassah? How does that happen?
Emotion plays a lot into what we eventually do with our lives. So my husband and I, with our 2 very young children, moved to Dix Hills from Flushing, Queens in August of 1973. And being the new kid on the block of resales and a very organizationally minded block, everybody took me everywhere. They took me to every organization that you could name, and some you probably can't. I hadn't joined anywhere yet. But I was home and I got a phone call from the then president of Hadassah, a woman by the name of Patty Lerner, who said, I'm going to pick you up in 10 minutes. We're going to the local wall-bound supermarket, strip mall, to raise money for supplies for Hadassah Hospital. Now remember, I hadn't joined yet, but I had gone to a new member tea. And I said, thank you very much for thinking of me, but I can't. I have a 3-year-old at home, and I'm waiting for my daughter's kindergarten bus. And she said, but you have to. Fortunately for her and for me, I thought before the next words came out of my mouth, who is this woman to tell me what I have to do? But in a split second, Mark, I knew she was right. Because she, through Hadassah, was giving me an opportunity to do something, not just talk about doing something. And that made an impact on my life. But what happened less than a half an hour later was the most impactful thing on me personally, as to being able to share my pride for who I am, why I do what I do, and the Jewish people. We went to that strip mall, and my kids were taken care of. I took the little one with me, my son Mark. And some people gave and some people didn't. You know, we stood outside with a pushka. He was in the push cart, I had a pushka. And it was nice. It was really nice. I felt like I was really doing something because the money I was raising was really going to do something special. What was it going to do? It was going to help anyone who was brought into Hadassah Hospital, whether they were Jewish, whether they were the perpetrator, whether they were the victim, a soldier or a civilian, Jew, Arab, Christian, it didn't matter. And one woman approached me, and I asked her to contribute, and she looked me straight in the face in my suburban safe haven of Dix Hills, New York, and said, "We need oil, not Jews. I hope the Arabs wipe the Israelis out of Israel once and for all." Now, the face you just made is probably similar to the one I made, but I went after her. And I said, "But don't you understand? Hadassah Hospital, medical science knows no boundaries. We save Jews and non-Jews alike. We have biological and chemical warfare stations underneath the ground." And she didn't care. She had an agenda. But what I didn't know that day is that she helped me form mine. And I joined Hadassah that night. I needed to know, what was this organization other than an organization for old Jewish ladies to raise money for a hospital, to matter of fact, which it is, by the way, but it's a lot more than that.
Absolutely.
A lot.
Incidentally, you know, first of all, it's a fabulous story.
Thank you.
And it's
true.
real life. And the other thing is, there are people who don't really understand the contribution Hadassah makes. And I'm not talking about Hadassah hospitals in Israel. It's a whole medical complex. Because if you ask most Jews who don't know much, what is Hadassah? It's exactly what you said. And one of the things I did want to know from you as president of Hadassah,
Sure.
I said in the open, there was a time when it seemed like every Jewish mother, every Jewish woman was part of Hadassah. We're in a new generation, and I want to know the extent to which that model, not that has it broken down, but is it harder for Hadassah to sort of embrace younger Jewish mothers? And if so, it would be typical of Jewish life as a whole. And what is Hadassah doing about it? You know, from your perspective, what's the challenge? But first tell me in general, how are you finding when you were, whether you were 25 or 30, whatever that happened to you, there are women now that age today, and they could be even in strip malls. And what do you find their attitude to be?
I find that we are in such a fast-paced, fast-moving society, and everything is instant. Social media is the place to be. If we want to advertise or publicize things that we are doing, such as you had mentioned earlier, the Coalition for Women's Equity and the summit that we're having on May 16th in Washington, D.C., these are opportunities for engagement. These are opportunities to make a difference. Everybody's making a difference is in fact different. I wake up every day and I look in the mirror and say, I know I'm a daughter and a sister and a mother and a grandmother and a wife and I have to be more. I want to be able to do something. Hadassah affords me the opportunities to do something much bigger than I could ever do by myself. And if Israel is important to you, if Israel is important to you in any way, shape, or form, Hadassah is the organization that says to you, how would you like to make a difference? What can we do? Can we offer you Jewish education, Zionist education, advocacy at a level that you can't possibly do by yourself? But in numbers, there's strength. So between our National Action Alerts, where people can find out what's going on, our National Action Center, where they can write to their legislators, and we provide them all those opportunities. Through Day on the Hill, date with the state, and days in the district, which are so critically important. If you can't get to Washington, wait till Washington comes back to its, it's during recess, wait till it comes back to its home district. Make an appointment. Go meet your legislator. Tell them what's important to you as a woman, as a Jewish woman, as a wife, as not a wife, as a mother, not a mother, single woman, career woman, but find something that you are passionate about. I believe that every one of the passions that you can name, well, almost every passion, can be fulfilled through Hadassah membership, leadership, engagement. Transferable skills. Sounds simple, but you have an opportunity to gain leadership skills. How to plan events. You don't have to wait for a bar mitzvah, a wedding, or an anniversary. Planning events, public speaking, motivation training, delegation training, time management training, things that Hadassah offers that you can use in your personal life, in your workspace. An opportunity to network with like-minded women, an opportunity to be connected, a woman in San Diego to be connected to a woman in Bangor, Maine, or Miami, Florida, or Seattle, Washington, or Chicago, with like-minded opportunities to develop as an individual, to develop communally, and to make a difference here in the United States that impacts not only you, your family, and your community, but also what's happening in Israel. And one of the things that impresses me, and I used to have this conversation with my mother-in-law, who I adored. It's going to sound funny, Ma, do you think if a cure for cancer or some other dreaded disease comes from Hadassah Medical Organization, that it's only going to cure Jewish people in the city of Jerusalem or the state of Israel? No, it will be our gift to all of humanity. And Mark, maybe, just maybe, someone in that not-so-friendly neighborhood or beyond is cured by something that came from Hadassah's medical organization. Maybe it's a little bit of an antidote to anti-Semitism. Maybe we're not so bad after all.
I speak to people who are either the professional or the lay leader of many major organizations, sure. Whether it's Federation and Jerry Silverman, whether it's AJC and David Harris, whether it's the President's Conference, which is an umbrella organization. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we discuss is, does today's generation of Jews, and I'm not talking about kids in college.
No, I understand.
I'm talking about young parents. And my personal sense is that the opportunity to bring people into Jewish life for engagement, for activity, often it has to do with young parents who are sensitive to things that when you're not, even when you're first married, life is a game. Life is not a game once you have a child. There's a sense of responsibility, and it infuses you with a responsibility that goes beyond your Absolutely. Own children. Mm-hmm. So my experience has been, over the years, that the opportunity to reach young Jews, it happens most as they become parents, and their children begin to grow, and they've got to worry about the things you were worrying about when you had a 3-year-old, and then next thing you know, you do have to have a bar mitzvah ceremony, a bat mitzvah ceremony. And are you sending your kids to Jewish camps? Are they involved with Jewish organizations? Do they have Jewish friends? And who are your own friends as young adults? And so we talk all the time about the challenge of today's generation. Mm-hmm. And my instinct is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I came to Stamford, Connecticut as a young rabbi. I was the young kid on the block. Mm-hmm. When I moved into Stamford, the Hadassah of Stamford was extremely strong. There was no woman who was part of the Jewish community who wasn't part of Hadassah. Now I'm the old rabbi in Stamford, Connecticut. It's not the same. Hadassah of Stamford is still a vibrant organization. It still has fabulous people who are members. But it's not everybody anymore. the way it was when I became a rabbi in 1972. And I hear that from Jewish organizations all the time. It's not this is not peculiar to Hadassah.
No, that's not.
What I am interested in is how do you view it personally?
Sure.
I want to hear your take on this. And then how is Hadassah addressing that problem, which represents where American Jewish life is, not where Hadassah is, not where AJC is, not where Federation is. But we've got a challenge now. And the challenge is that not everybody has today the kind of parents you had growing up with, the kind of home you grew up with. And not only that, the experiences you and I shared. We lived through the Six-Day War. We saw the resurrection of Soviet Jewry, the emancipation of Soviet Jewry, bringing, 1 million Russian Jews to Israel. And we were part of a liberation movement. Our kids today don't know about the Six-Day War, the Holocaust that shaped your father. Nobody. That's like Civil War and the Holocaust. They were about the same day, weren't they? And nobody lives through the kind of exhilaration we felt when we saved Russian Jewry. So your challenge is a much more difficult challenge to deal with as the president of Hadassah in 2018 than was, 40 years ago when I was becoming part of the Jewish community that has now been my home for 40 years. So that's my question for you.
That's a big question. You're right. I think all the Jewish organizations are asking the same questions. How do we reach today's generation of leaders, tomorrow's generation of leaders, and the one after that? It is something that we have to pay attention to, or we're all going to disappear. So from my perspective, you have to listen. You have to first admit that my mother-in-law's Hadassah and my Hadassah when I first started is not the same that's going to appeal to today's younger woman.
That's very honest.
Well, if I'm not going to be honest, then
Right.
I'm never going to grow the organization.
I agree with you.
I believe Hadassah has just done something where we have brought a group of younger, I'm not going to say young because if you think young 20, 25, no, I'm talking 30 to 50 is still young.
Exactly right.
And that's the group of people that we need to hear from,
Yes.
and we need to be flexible enough in our structures and what we expect. They're not going to do what we did. They're not going to sit around and stuff envelopes and sort mail by zip code. They're not going to do it. But they will go out and rally for something they believe in. They will advocate on an issue. I want to come back to the Health Summit for one reason.
Please.
Okay? A young woman came to the Health Summit last year in 2017, where we had thought leaders and legislators and medical personnel. The coalition has grown from the American Heart Association to the Black Women's Health Imperative, National Organization for Women, Planned Parenthood, and more from 14 to 28. She came. She was on fire. She loved every minute of it. She was so excited. She went home to California. She rallied her friends, her colleagues, her Hadassah members, women who weren't necessarily Hadassah members, but became Hadassah members. Why? Because she had a day in the district, a date with the state. She went to Sacramento. She brought women with her. They lobbied, they spoke to their legislators on issues that are important to them. What's important to them is gender equity in medical research, women's pay, gender equity in the pay, in the
Equal pay for
equal pay.
work.
Thank you. The point is, you have to, you're on a television station, right? I promote a radio station, WII-FM. That's what's in it for me. And women have to feel
Absolutely.
that there's something in it for them, their family, their community, if they're networking, perhaps for their career, whatever that might be. But we have to be flexible in structure of our units. We have to be flexible in what we expect women to do. They're not going to give us the time. They don't have it. And if they're working women and the weekend comes and they want to do things with their kids, then let's provide them opportunities to do Jewish with their kids. You know, we have a tagline, Hadassah, the power of women who do. Well, and the men who support us. But what do? We do Zionism. Zionism is a living, I don't even know what, it's a living ism, as so many isms have passed, but it gives us an opportunity to do what we do while we're perfecting ourselves in Tikkun Olam, and we're perfecting. Zionism didn't end with the state of Israel's birth. Zionism is an ongoing ideology. And so we have that opportunity to infuse in the next generation. Look, I was asked a question when I was first elected, and I was very lucky. I ran with 2 other women of whom I had tremendous respect, and I won. And the first question I was asked is, what is your goal? And my goal is to recapture the positive definition of the word Zionism.
Well, that's fabulous.
Well, that's how I really feel.
That's fabulous.
So to answer your question, if you really want to know, take your family to Israel. Mm-hmm. Take your family to Israel and go to Hadassah and go to the emergency room and see a mini microcosm of a utopian society, because our staff and our patient composition is as diverse as you can imagine, all together working, helping, praying with each other.
But wait, doesn't that give you enormous pride?
Yes, and you know what else does? A nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize. And we were nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for our, not Hadassah, the Women's Zionist Organization
Yes,
of America, but our signature project, the Hadassah Medical Organization, was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for its equal treatment of all who come through its doors. I'm very proud of that.
And you should be. And by the way, as a Jew,
yes,
I'm proud of it.
Thank you.
I believe that what Hadassah, the symbol of what Hadassah does and what Hadassah is, and I'm now talking about the medical center,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that, and you did allude to this, but I want to make sure people heard you. There have been times when there have been horrific terrorist attacks perpetrated against Israeli Jews.
Correct.
And the terrorist has survived. That terrorist is taken to Hadassah Hospital along with the victims.
Correct.
And the terrorist may be in the next room. And Hadassah takes care of everyone.
Correct.
At that moment, it's not about whether you're a terrorist or... No, you're a human being in medical need. And if you're an Arab, whether you're an Arab Israeli, whether you're a Palestinian on the West Bank, and you need medical care, everybody knows. You come to Hadassah, mm-hmm. and you'll be treated as a human being. To me, that reflects the essence of Jewish values. And that's something people, A, should know, and B, if they don't, they appreciate. You should know how much you and all the people who make Hadassah possible are appreciated because of what you stand for and what you do.
So, wouldn't that be something worthy of the next generation to take pride in and want to perpetrate even more? My father taught me that to save a life is as if we've saved them all. He didn't say to save a Jewish life. He said to save a life. And that's another...
He's quoting, by the way, Talmud.
Well,
Talmud does not say saved every Jew. It saves, you save one person, you've saved all mankind. That's the Talmudic Jewish principle. Your father taught you well.
Thank you. I hope. I see it in my children. I see it in my grandchildren. We were very fortunate. We took the whole family to Israel summer of 2016 because I'm a hands-on savta. And I needed my grandchildren to understand why I wouldn't necessarily be at every soccer game and every basketball game, and I wasn't going to miss the important things. And so I wanted them to see themselves. And the pride that they took, they're now 14, 11, and 11, but the pride that they took in, wow, this is what savta does, and they understood it. And for me, that's a huge statement. And when they talk about it to their friends, they still talk about it in such a way with such pride. Now, my 14-year-old has become very active in B'nai B'rith Girls, and she is
Wonderful.
an active active member, and I'm very proud of her. Whatever they can do that they feel they are contributing of their time, of their presence, and even when they're raising money, if it's for a Jewish cause, then you hope that they're going to take leadership roles later on when it's their turn.
You're doing beautiful work.
Thank you very much.
As a savta, as a grandma. No, that's lovely. By the way, you were the second national president that I've had the honor of speaking with when Hadassah was celebrating its 100th anniversary in 2011, 2012. Marcy Natan was president, and she sat with me, and she was wonderful. And what impressed me there, and it impresses me with you too, is there's an enormous commitment. And when you talk about Zionism, it's thrilling to me. Because as you point out, Zionism has become, in some circles, even in the Jewish world, a dirty word. It is flabbergasting to me. But I remember how Marcy also was talking about the commitment that Hadassah as an organization has. It's not about a hospital.
No.
It's about how do we upbuild this Jewish enterprise called the State of Israel, and Hadassah Hospital and Medical Center, and your affiliation with Hebrew University, and all the disciplines that Hadassah now teaches as it educates the next generation of doctors and nurses and dentists and health professionals. All of that is the essence of what Hadassah is doing, and it's really, in many ways, as I listen to you, Ellen, it represents exactly your soul.
Thank you very much.
No, you should. I am honored to be sitting with you, and you should be very proud.
May I give a plug for something?
Anything you want.
Okay. You mentioned Henrietta Szold.
Yes.
And the fact that Hadassah as an organization started in 1912. But as a result of the medical team that was sent, 2 nurses were sent in 1913, but a medical team was sent in 1918, which became the foundation for the healthcare system in Israel. So in 2018, we, Hadassah, the Hadassah Medical Organization, is celebrating its centennial anniversary, as well as our Hadassah Henrietta Szold Hebrew University School of Nursing 100th anniversary. The Department of Ophthalmology is celebrating its 100th anniversary, and of course the 70th anniversary of the State of Israel. So we have a lot to be celebrating, and we invite everyone who would like to come to join us on our mission in October, October 7th to the 15th.
Fabulous. I want to talk about a different aspect.
Sure.
It has to do with the fact that there is a sensitivity within Hadassah to be aware of problems specifically that apply to women. And the word that's used in Hadassah is you are trying to empower women. I wish you'd talk about that aspect of Hadassah's perspective. And, and I'm now talking for myself.
Okay.
There's a certain kind of feminism which I believe is rooted indelibly in Jewish values. And the notion that Judaism is sexist is something that is said by Jews who don't understand what Judaism is. And Judaism has this there's an exalted view of what women are, but more than that, there is an appreciation of what human beings are. And men and women are biologically different, that biology does affect the way in which people perceive the world, but it should never, ever impact the opportunities a person has to do and to become and to be creative, and certainly if they work to be compensated in the exact same way a male would be compensated for. Then I read about the empowerment of women as it applies to health issues. And I'm saying to myself, I want to understand what that feminism is.
Sure.
Because, as I said, there is a feminism that I think is the highest of Jewish values. There's also a distorted feminism, which is about pitting women against men. And that's not the feminism of Hadassah.
No.
And I want you to talk about that.
I'll be happy to talk about that. And I'm going to start with something that happened a very long time ago. And for those who don't know why Hadassah is named Hadassah, why we're called Hadassah, it's because Hadassah was Queen Esther's Hebrew name, Queen Esther being the heroine of the Purim story. So since we were founded during the season of Purim in 1912, it was natural. It was just a natural fact to call the organization Hadassah. When you talk about gender equity, I'm not saying women are better. I'm not saying men are better. I'm saying we both need to understand the difference, whether it's biologically or in other factors. I personally have a problem when I understand that there are more male mice being used in laboratory studies. There is a disproportionate number of men in clinical trials. Then why should the outcomes be positive for me, my daughters, my daughter, daughter-in-law, granddaughters? I believe it's not a matter of we're better or we deserve more. That's not what it's about at all. But it is a matter of how many times have we heard, well, if a man got that disease, we would have found a cure already. And I'm proud that Hadassah has undertaken as one of its advocacy pillars, and as far as health and wellness is concerned, gender equity in medical research. Of course, it's also gender equity in the workplace, and gender equity just the phrase gender equity doesn't have to have anything after it. So if I discover that a woman who is taking hormones and she weighs 125 pounds, and a gentleman who weighs 225 pounds are being given the same medication, I want to know why. I want to understand that. And so if we have an opportunity to advocate in the halls of Congress to make changes, Hadassah gives you the opportunity to make a difference. I call it one-stop shopping. Whatever you're passionate about, we have a program for you, and one of our programs of the organization, not the Hadassah Medical Organization, but Hadassah, the Women's Zionist Organization of America, is a Defining Zionism series. It's an online series that happens every 6 weeks or so, because there are as many personal definitions of Zionism as there are people. And I'm not talking about the classic definition of Zionism, or whether you're all the way to the right or all the way to the left. And we provide a safe space. And we give many of our presenters, it started with a frontal presentation, an introduction, a presentation, a Q&A, and it was an hour. And then we realized, people aren't going to necessarily watch for an hour. So we did 5-minute sound bites. And we have had the most diversified group of presenters to show that there are so many different perspectives of Zionism. One isn't right and one isn't wrong. For me to engage with high school kids, with college kids, to help turn around the BDS movement, Hadassah put out a brochure on how to talk about Israel with a whole bunch of scenarios that should be in the hands of everyone, every college student, Jewish college student today. It's from Hadassah. Why? Because we know that the opposition is very well trained, very well educated, and what they're doing on campus to our kids who are less prepared. Shame on us. Shame on us. Why aren't we preparing our kids better? Because the next one's going to do it. If you don't do it yourself, you can't blame the next one. So Hadassah, through education, Jewish education, Zionist education, health education, issues on which we can advocate. There is such environmental issues. There are so many different opportunities for engagement. Whatever time you have, whatever location in which you live, and if there isn't a chapter right there, we'll connect you somehow to like-minded women in another community. Why? Because we value you. You. I don't mean you, Mark. I mean you. The Hadassah woman out there. We value you too, but you'll never be a member.
How much does it cost to become a Hadassah member?
How much does it cost? It's $36 for annual membership and $250 for life membership. One-time payment.
Okay, let me get this straight. for double chai,
You bet.
for $36,
Yes.
a woman can be a member for a year of Hadassah.
Yes.
And if she doesn't want to worry about it every year, she pays $250.
And I'll
she's
never
a
call her
lifetime.
again for dues. I'll
Okay.
call her for other things.
Okay. You know, in the Jewish world, we are all nonprofits.
Mm-hmm.
We are all struggling to raise the funds necessary to do what we do. And, you know, I'm on the air all the time asking our viewers, because this is like a PBS model. We rely on you for the support necessary to keep a Jewish channel like this on the air. There's never been, and there is no Jewish channel like JBS. And the only way it works is by asking people for their financial support. Hadassah is another nonprofit. You have the same challenge we do. But I want to say this publicly. I don't believe there should be a Jewish woman anywhere who is not a member of Hadassah. For double chai, for $36, every Jewish woman should be a part of Hadassah. And it should be, once again, what I experienced when I was a kid rabbi. You come into a community, one thing you know, every woman in that community is part of Hadassah. And what you've heard Ellen say is, a woman can participate in a myriad ways. As each individual person wants to express his, even, by the way, you have men who are associates.
Men are associates. They choose to pay a one-time fee, and they associate with Hadassah, and they are wonderful.
Okay.
They are a group of men who are fundraising to
I know
support.
them. I know them.
But they're not members.
Yes, and I'm not talking. I'm really talking about the fact that every Jewish woman
Yes.
should be a part of this organization, and then let them do it to the extent to which it is meaningful. But they should be able to say to another Jew, to their husband, to their child, to their grandchild, of course I'm a member of Hadassah. And again, I have never said that about any other organization, and it's not like I don't think, there are organizations that I think are fabulous.
There are.
But Hadassah occupies a unique place in the history of Zionism, in the history of the State of Israel, in the history of American Jewry. And so I wanted you to know that if I could encourage every woman to be part of Hadassah, I want to do it.
Thank you. And if I may, you said something very telling when you spoke about being a young rabbi in Stamford, Connecticut. And you said every woman and her mother was a member. So I'm going to challenge you, Mark Golub. I want every woman and her daughter and her daughter-in-law and her granddaughters to be members of Hadassah.
You're absolutely right.
Because it is from generation to generation, and I appreciate this opportunity. Dues, every woman can be a dues-paying member, and there's a separation between dues and fundraising dollars, donors, and supporters who then support
Yes.
the projects. Of course, the hospital is HMO, the Hadassah Medical Organization, is our signature project, which leads me to one quick story, if I might. May I?
Absolutely.
One of the most exciting things that happened to me, Ellen Hershkin from Dix Hills, New York, was the opportunity to welcome and host Melania Trump and Sarah Netanyahu at Hadassah Hospital in Karam last May.
Fabulous.
I had the opportunity to thank Melania Trump on behalf of all of us for the United States support of the ASHA grant, the American Schools and Hospitals Abroad, which enables us to buy the equipment to service everyone who comes through our doors, and to let her know we are the only American-owned hospital in Israel. And I wanted to thank her as much as she wanted to thank us.
That is so sweet. By the way, does this reflect any political perspective of yours?
Hadassah is a
Okay.
non-partisan,
So the
pluralistic
fact that you welcome
organization.
Melania Trump
Yes.
says nothing one way or the other
She's the
about
First
your
Lady of the United
about your
States.
political
Absolutely
okay.
not.
And people should understand. I want to make sure people
No, I
understand
do
that.
appreciate that.
Okay.
The First Lady of the United States,
Right.
on the President and First Lady's first trip outside the United States, they first went to Saudi Arabia and then they came into Israel, and we were there to escort First Lady through our hospital.
You know, I've asked you many questions about you,
Yeah.
and you and your husband have been philanthropic on many levels, and you've been involved in many Jewish organizations, even beyond Hadassah.
Yes.
Where does that come from? Where does the impetus that you and your husband share, that you support other Jewish attempts to improve Jewish life and to improve the world?
I'd like to believe it came from our parents, both sets of parents. My in-laws were not wealthy people at all, neither were my parents, but tzedakah was very important, and we were taught at an early age, both in my house and my husband's home. My in-laws were as philanthropic as they could be, and we've made certain life choices that we support our synagogue, we support Hadassah, we support the Israel Sports Center for the Disabled, and several others, which I'm not going to name because
The list goes on.
the list goes on. But Hadassah is our primary philanthropic. It's the thrust of our philanthropic dollars, because I guess we were imbued when we were very young that it's really important to give back and to say thank you. I'm here, I'm okay, I have to do something for somebody else because they may not be able to do it themselves. I've said this many times. Ellen Hershkin can't build a medical complex by herself, but kulanu biyachad, together, look what we can do. When you add, how did the ocean, one little drop of water turned into? So little by little, it gives us an opportunity, everyone, to be a shareholder, a stakeholder, an owner. We are the owners, and it's really important. So it was instilled in us, both of us, when we were very young.
Kol hakavod to you. I am proud to know you, and you and your husband are filling the ocean of Jewish life. Mazal tov to you. I hope you continue to do marvelous work. I know you will. I hope you go from strength to strength. I hope Hadassah grows. I believe that you will help Hadassah in myriad ways. And it has been an honor to have you here. I hope it is only the first of many times you and I are together.
Thank you so much. I look forward to next time. Thank you for having me.
Ellen Hershkin, National President of Hadassah, and a woman who's making an enormous contribution to Jewish life in countless ways. It's been an honor for me to be able to introduce her to you. I hope she's broadened your own perspective, not simply on Hadassah, on women's health issues, on the state of Israel, on what Zionism means and what it is to be today a committed, passionate Jew. And once again, Hadassah will be holding its second annual Women's Health Empowerment Conference in Washington, D.C., May 15th to 17th. For more information, you can go to the Hadassah website. As always, I invite you to be in touch with me with any thoughts or comments you may have to any of the ideas expressed here on this edition of L'Chaim. Please email me, write me, post on our Facebook page, or tweet me. I look forward to hearing from many of you. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. L'Chaim, my friends, to life.
L'Chaim is a presentation of Jewish education in media.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double high or more. Simply visit the JBS website at jbstv.org and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please, indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check to JBS, P.O. Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.